when people are employed in ways that don't fully tap everything they are, that's the greatest tragedy. And I think if everyone had the ability to express themselves the way they want to, our society would just be transformed overnight, and be their own identities the way they want to be, instead of what the job position tells them to be or what society tells them to be, whatever they have. The identity that I've always kind of just assumed was be a jack of all trades, but like a master of none. That's why I never really took bowling seriously. And I always did other sports like baseball and soccer and everything. So I feel like I didn't have an identity until later in life, until probably when I moved out here. What I do on the day to day is not the fulfillment of like some pre-existing job description. It's things that I took interest in on my own that other people want to like appreciate or like or want access to. So yeah, I can tell you about the academics, but the rest is what you have to create on your own. If I could do it over again, I probably wouldn't be here. This is by total luck. It's blind, dumb luck that I got this job, and the majesty hasn't worn off. So it's a lot of fun to be a part of something that is just a dream come true. I don't know how else to explain it, Josh.
What's up, Chad?
Hello. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. You're sideways.
Oh, how's that?
Oh, there you are. Now we're square.
Okay. Sweet. How are you?
Awesome, man. I'm doing well, Chad. I appreciate you coming on and hanging out for a little bit. You're officially the first bowler I've had on the podcast.
Sweet. Well, it's an honor and a privilege. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you reaching out. I was telling my girlfriend this morning, I was excited. I've been telling everyone that I bowl with and stuff like that. I'm excited to chat with you because I posted something on my Instagram a couple weeks ago just about some recent guests, some upcoming guests, and I asked a question: who would you like to see next? And you said, why not a bowler? And then I reached out. I was like, why not you? Just to open it up. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't call myself a bowler per se, but I definitely dabble in the arts a little bit.
Say, I've seen your skills that you post up on the gram. You look like you know what
Yeah,
you're doing.
we have fun. We have fun. When you bowl all day, that's the practice that it becomes. So yeah, just bowl. I'm right here in the test facility looking down the lane. So we're always busy doing something.
That's sweet. And you guys are out of Utah, if I remember correctly, like Salt Lake?
About 40 minutes north of Salt Lake in a city
Okay.
called Brigham City, Utah. So it's kind of rural up here. It's really quiet and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And are you from out that way?
Oh no, I was born in Grand Junction, Colorado, so it's just east of here. And I grew up in Atlanta for pretty much my whole life, all the way through college, and then moved to Florida to go to grad school for exercise physiology. But the out-of-state tuition was like 3 times as much as in-state tuition. So we moved down there, my wife and I, to kind of get closer to her family, and I figured I'd go back to school and try and get smarter. But that didn't pan out. So the next night I moved to Florida, I think I shot like 300 subbing in league, and then the guy asked me to run a pro shop for him. Like he assumed like I was like this bowler, I knew how to drill balls. I didn't know any of that stuff, so he asked me to manage his shop. So I lived in Florida. Long story short, I lived in Florida for 6 years doing that, and then moved out west to Utah.
Awesome. I actually just moved to Florida a week ago from today, to be closer to my girlfriend's family. And we
Yep.
realized that after, it's been about 16 months since I stopped riding BMX, and just to pursue more of what I'm doing with a higher level of focus, and the risk just kind of wasn't worth it anymore as I'm getting
Mm-hmm.
older, and just, it's not a priority. It's not paying my bills anymore, which was a dream come true. Somehow made that happen. But realized my
Mm-hmm.
family is between Massachusetts and California, Florida, South Carolina, and Jackie's family is all down here in Florida. So I was like, all right, well, now that
Mm-hmm.
BMX doesn't really control where I live and what's best for my training, let's explore some other opportunities to live, and let's be close to family. And then it came to I'd be interested in moving back to the Northeast if we could live in like the Boston or Providence area. My family is all in Cape Cod for the most part, my dad's side of the family. And
Oh, I bet the food is so good
oh,
right
it's
there.
great. Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
And then I was like, well, I don't really want to go deal with those types of winters anymore and potholes and, what they call mass holes. And then I don't think
Mm.
you'll, she's from Florida. I was like, I don't think you'll last more than 2 weeks of a real winter because you've only experienced maybe Thanksgiving winter, but like that's not deep into January, February. And so we picked Florida and, a week now it's been great.
Cool. Yeah. Florida's great. Florida's got its perks for sure.
Yeah. So you kind of opened up some of the things I wanted to talk about today. Like I always, I reached out to you, one to come on the podcast, but two just to see what you wanted to chat about. I'm always interested in the guests, perspective of what they want to talk about, what's meaningful to them. And you kind of already spoke to it, but I wrote down, you said something about transitioning from something with no interest at 25 years old to running a pro shop and now being the bowling ball designer, technical director, I think it is, at Storm Products and Rotogrip. And I just want to dive into that because that's such a fascinating journey. And I recently got back into bowling about a year and a half ago. When BMX took over, I was about 14 or 15. I was actually going through some of my patches and trophies from when I was bowling in junior
Mm-hmm.
league and all that stuff. And it was
Yeah.
cool to see. But I really fascinating behind the technical aspect of bowling today, the precision, like it's advanced so much. Like two-hand bowling is like a thing now. When I was younger, it was like people didn't know how to bowl. They would try to hook the ball with two hands.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many elements to it. And I'm really fascinated with going back to the beginning, 25 years old. You have no interest in whatever it is that you were alluding to. And then you found, was that bowling actually? Should I start there?
Yeah, I was bowling. So I kind of bowled my whole life. I mean, I've been in a league ever since I was 3 every year. And I never had a good coach. Bowling wasn't that popular in Georgia, honestly, down in the South, because the winters aren't that bad in the states that have the bad winters, like up north and, Michigan and Wisconsin and Ohio. They have amazing bowling. They have high school bowling. And that was never a thing in Georgia. So I never really took it as seriously as, some of the people that are kind of in the industry today and the ones that are bowling professionally, especially those guys grew up in awesome bowling states. So the the bowling, it wasn't, just never really piqued my interest. So I kind of just did the athletics, and that's why I went to college for in Atlanta was exercise science. Still never took bowling seriously, and that was well after college, right? So yeah, at 25. So that was 2009 is when 25, moved to Florida, and then just bowled league. And one night, subbed one night, I didn't know anybody from anything. No one knew me. And I shoot 300, and the guy asked me to run his pro shop. I was like, well, I am new to town and I could use a job. So I kind of just researched it online, and then kind of connected the anatomy and physiology aspects between the hand and the form and the technique and how everyone spins it differently and how that kind of translates as to how a ball should fit on someone's hand. And that was kind of an aspect that no one really had touched on in that industry, in the pro shop industry. So I kind of had like this little niche that I was filling. And then so I started having guys drive about 3 hours from South Florida and several hours down from South Georgia, and then come, still friends with a lot of them today. But it was the fitting that kind of made me stick out from the rest, I feel like. And the layouts and all the tech stuff. I'm looking at all sorts of cores and stuff here. And that came later. And trust me, I messed up a lot of balls, like, drilling a right-handed ball for a left-hander. And, I missed a line by like an inch when I was trying to cut it on the drill press. I had my fair share of mistakes. I was just learning from scratch. I didn't know about classes or anything like that. They do teach classes on how to drill. Never took them. Didn't know they existed. So after several years of trial and error, I had a chance to go into the business for myself and open up my own pro shop. So I did that, and then got on staff with Storm, the ball manufacturer, and then got to know the ins and outs of the industry. Went to some classes, went to some seminars, kind of did the continuing education thing. And then once something opened up out west here in Utah, I came out and I was like, absolutely, my family's still out in Colorado. So I was like, yeah, let me get out closer. And Um, Luckily enough, it was right on time, because about a month after I moved to Utah, my dad told me he had brain cancer. So that was that was a really rough patch, because my wife and kid were still back east in Florida when all that went down. So that was a challenging time, and he passed about 3 months later, brain tumor. And then mom moved closer out to us. She lived like 3 doors down from us, so that was good. But anyway, yeah, it's come a long way. I never thought I would be doing it. I never understood the tech or anything like that until, geez, some of these kids these days learn that stuff at like such a young age, and it's just so impressive. And if I wish I wish I did that. If I could do it over again, I probably wouldn't be here. This is by total luck. It's blind dumb luck that I got this job, and the majesty hasn't worn off. So it's a lot of fun to be a part of something that is just a dream come true. I don't know how else to explain it, Josh.
Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely understand what you're saying, and I'm sorry about your dad. You know, as you may know, and the listeners definitely know, you know, it's been a journey I've been on for about 11 years with battling brain
Absolutely.
tumors
Yeah.
and have an upcoming surgery in 3 to 6 months with a recent discovery. So definitely feel you there, and nothing but love and respect to you and your family. And it seems like things always kind of work out the way we may not intend, but works out for the better. I'd say, because you know you made that shift out there at the right time to be there. I'd assume for your dad, and the time where he needed it, and then one opportunity came up. And was that opportunity that brought you out west? Was that Storm?
It was Storm. Yeah. Yep. It was Storm. So I I was on staff, and I kind of knew the guys from the office here. And the office is small. Like Storm has a really big reach, but there's only like 30 people in the office. Um, the workers in the factory and the plant, there's about 120. So, but that was the opportunity to come out west. Yes.
That's awesome. And so, how many years has it been since you've been working with Storm?
Oh gosh, 6 years,
Okay,
six
cool.
years now. Yep.
That's awesome, because I remember I found you on Instagram a while ago, just when I get back into bowling. So
Right. Yep.
the origins of me getting back into bowling was September 2019. The bowling center I grew up in, after about 50 or 60 years, was shutting down, and my dad invited me to come out to the going away tournament. So I had his friend
That's
out
cool.
there drill me up one of his balls, like plugged it and drilled it for me. I was using rental shoes, and somehow I still, you know, muscle memory, still knew what, you know, sort of to do, at least on a house pattern, and you know, somehow
Mm-hmm.
made the top 10, and you know, got knocked out in the first match after that. But I was like, man, like this is so fun, because I stopped competing professionally in 2017 in BMX, but I still rode the same level, still trying to progress, because I was just kind of lost in like, I'm not making money from this anymore, but like I'm able,
Mm-hmm.
I love it. What do I do? And then I was like, man, like at that time, I was starting to kind of come up with the idea of like, what if I just don't ride for a while? Which 4 months later, 5 months later is when the last time I rode. But bowling was like something that I loved doing as a child. My dad was super thrilled for me to get back into it, brought us, you know, closer together. And it was something for me to put my energy and time into, that I can progress. You know, people are doing it up until 70s, 80s, whatever. As long as you can stand and
Mm-hmm.
walk to a
Mm-hmm.
degree, maybe the
Mm-hmm.
level of competition won't be as high. But I was like, man, like this is something for me, relatively no risk. I can progress as much as I want. I can put as much time into it. I can get that competitive energy out. And now, with like it being 16 years back bowling, you know, 16-year break, the technology has gotten so out of this world, and the
Mm-hmm.
skill, and just there's so much to it, and I just love the nitty gritty. And so tying this back into your position, you know, I was looking through your Instagram to kind of get some inspiration of things to talk about that maybe we haven't in the
Sure. Yeah.
past. But one of the first things you have is technical director and bowling ball designer. So what does that, what does that all entail? You know, from like a surface level for outsiders that don't know much about bowling, how much like I'm always amazed when I talk about to people that don't know much about bowling. We're like, oh, you're bowling again. There's so much science involved, from the
So
covers to the
much.
cores to the material of the covers to the oil conditions to the type of lane, like to the, you know, the angles. Like there's so much physics involved with it, which
Mm-hmm.
happens to be a line of Storm's balls.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
what does that day to day look like for you in your position at Storm, and like what goes into designing a ball? Like just for the people that may not have any clue that there's so much science involved in it.
That's a lot of R&D. It's a lot of R&D. And I think one of the reasons why Storm is kind of they've had the biggest target on their backs for a long time is the amount of money that they invest back into the research and development. The budget, they don't have a budget. So it's constantly testing new cores and new covers. And I'll actually, here, I got one sitting right next to, so like these guys are just, it's the guts of the ball. It's the engine. So that's what we're dealing with on a day to day. I work closely with the R&D department. I'm in technical, so that kind of bridges the gap between marketing and the R&D. Mm-hmm. So I take what the guys in R&D do, and then I put copywriting to it, in which the ads and the websites and videos and stuff are built kind of around, and social media posts and stuff for all of our channels. So I do a lot of ball testing with the lab. So we have about 4 or 5 dedicated ball testers. And like you alluded to, there's so many different variables and aspects of it. And you'll never learn everything. There's no way to learn everything. Yep. Because the way you drill the balls and the way the dynamics, every ball is different. Every single one ever made in the history of man. This is just the way it is. You'll never learn it all. But anyway, yeah, it's so a lot of ball tests. We have a couple dedicated ball testers. So we have computer programs, tracking systems out on the lanes here that detect to about the millionth of an inch where the ball position is. And of course, like speed and rev rate and all that stuff comes into play. So we're looking closely at these numbers all the time. But I take that data and then again, put it into marketable terms that people can understand, because there's this stuff the rabbit hole goes very, very deep with these designs and the chemicals that they use in the cover stocks, the urethanes. It's nuts. So day to day, involved in a lot of videos. I was a video kind of producer in Florida for a little bit, kind of doing like weddings and things like awesome. That Storm has let me take that kind of skill set and apply it to their videos here, which is cool, because there's another cool thing about the company. They let you work on your strengths all the time. And if you have time to do it, you just go do it. You don't have to just, okay, I want to do a trend 2 versus trend video. Okay, cool. Just go do it. Can't wait to see what it looks like. It's a pretty cool situation to be in. I've never had a job like it. So day-to-day videos, I write the algorithm for Belmo's video game, is Bowling with Belmo. So I tell the game what to do. So it's testing a lot of that. So if I'm not making videos or something, or throwing bowling balls, I'm probably playing video games. It's a really, really tough job, but someone's got to do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we have fun here.
Yeah, and it's easy to see. I mean, stepping back a little bit, so much of your background is applicable for the position or the role that you play today, and providing the best design, technical aspects to content, to just giving someone, whether they're an entry level or professional, looking to get a ball to match. Like, there's so many resources that you guys at Storm provide. And I know I've gone down that rabbit hole on YouTube for hours and hours, for weeks at a time, trying to learn what is an RG, like what is a differential, what is an inner different, what is this cover stock. You mentioned chemicals on a cover stock, and what that, like, there's regulation around what chemicals and amounts you can use because of how much oil it picks up, and there's so much to it. But what I love about Storm is that you can go on YouTube and you can learn. For years I've been looking at content on the channel. There's so much, just from beginner to getting nitty gritty about, you guys, I forget his name, but there's you, I believe it's you and this other gentleman with a bike wheel, and you guys are talking about RG and different. That video helped me so much understand at least the basics of what I was trying to understand. And then when I'm, having conversation with the guy running the pro shop when I was out in Raleigh, here's what I'm looking for. This is what I'm thinking based on what you've seen me do. How does this apply? And he'd be like, yes, I agree, or no, let's check out this. And then it worked out. And that's something I love about getting into this work. You have skill sets that take your role to the next level, to where I think someone else that would come in maybe wouldn't do such a good job. Maybe they're still passionate, skillful, but because you have, exercise physiology, you have the videography background, and you're able to understand the very complex science around it, but you can distill it simply for people like myself or even people that have never bowled before. It makes it that much more enjoyable, especially when you're purchasing a ball and you like, I don't know what I'm looking for, because my first ball back after 16 years off, I just bought the Astrophysics because it looked cool and had a cool name. It worked out for me, and now I understand what it does, and now I have, I think, 6 other balls now. So it's really cool that you guys do that, and they allow you that freedom to ultimately get their message and their products out on another level.
Yeah, yeah, they do a good job here, and I think that's the reason why they've been kind of the big dog in the pack for, oh my gosh, like 20 years now. They just the cool thing about like the owner, Bill Crispin, I just saw him this morning. You don't see him very often come in anymore. He's enjoying he works hard, but he wants to take it easy too, and he's rightfully deserved it for a very long time. He came in and he walks around and says hi to everybody still, and gives you nucks, and it's a neat place. But they give back a lot. They give back to the Cancer Institute here in Salt Lake, $100,000 every year. We usually do like ball sales and stuff for like the ribbon, the pink ribbon, the breast cancer and everything, and they give 100% of the proceeds to the Huntsman Cancer Institute in Salt Lake, and that's dope. That's cool. No one else does that. Not that I've seen. It's pretty neat stuff to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool getting to know that side, because I didn't know those things that you just shared, but like it kind of just magnifies more of why I resonate with the brand, and just maybe these subconscious things that are put out there from something simple as a YouTube video about what's the difference between RG and differential and how does this affect the ball, to giving back. It makes sense why it's one of the prominent brands. Like if you Google any type of bowling ball, like I'm sure Storm pops up right away, especially on YouTube and things like that. And that's really cool, because it seems like the environment that you're in and the position that you have the freedom, I'd say, to express yourself and your different backgrounds and abilities to further the brand, it just makes it that much more of an enjoyable environment to work in, where it's fun. Like you said, like, it's like kind of unbelievable to have this role that was on accident. I mean, if it wasn't for that 300 game that night when you were subbing, who knows if you'd be on this path today, and then being, having this conversation with me today, who's kind of like a bowling nerd now.
It's wild. But yeah, RGs and diffs, man, there's so much cool stuff to it. I could talk to you till blue in the face, so we'll get you Arsenal lined up and we'll be square. It's cool, neat.
Now, before I kind of want to dive into some more, pull back some layers to some deeper topics. But before we get there, just for people that may not understand kind of anything we're talking about with the science behind bowling, one of the things that people are always shocked by when I tell them, bowling balls have so many variables from the inside out, and then on the lanes, you can't see it, but the oil patterns make such a difference in what you're essentially playing on, and how that affects your game. How would you break down, just like on a surface level, the basics for someone to understand? Like if they've never bowled other than just disco lights and music, and then throwing the ball down the lane with probably a house plastic ball, what is it, or I guess I should say, like, what is the biggest misconception about bowling you've seen, and how can we clarify that on a simple form for people listening?
Oh gosh, this is like our favorite thing to talk about here. We're huge about education. So the biggest difference that you find in bowling ball technology specifically is that the balls at the alley have nothing about them works in your favor. They're made out of plastic. They have no cores inside of them. As you can see, these things have pretty dynamic shapes that create different mass and different displacements. So what's happening here is the cores that we put in the balls make these things dynamically imbalanced. This thing is going to wobble and try and correct its own course until it finds a nice steady axis that it can rotate around. And that core wobble is what you see back at the foul line as the hook on the lane. It's like a gyroscopic effect is what's happening inside. There's nothing inside of a plastic ball at the bowling alley. It's not going to spin for you. So this thing actually revs up much like a figure skater. right? When they bring their arms in, just like in that video, you bring your arms in and bringing the mass closer towards your x-axis, your low RG axis. So it doesn't take a lot of energy to get that ball rolling. It's a gyroscopic effect. So, but if as soon as you start putting mass way outside, like further away from the axis, then it's going to be harder to rotate around that axis. You're raising the high RG, you're raising the RG of the bowling ball. So those are the types of numbers that we look at. RGs and differentials is how quickly does it spin up? Does it have a low moment of inertia? Does it have a low RG, low radius of gyration, or does it have a high RG? Does it take a lot of energy for me to crank on that ball to make it, which delays the hook? It completely changes the reaction of the bowling ball down the lane. So when you get a bowler like Belmo, who's well above 500 RPMs, that's a lot of RPMs to put on a 16-pound bowling ball, right?
Yep.
Then you can really dial in a type of bowling ball reaction, and the sky's the limit with the things that you can create. And so you can measure how quickly the ball revs up, and that's the RG. Then you can measure how much it flares, how much out of balance is it. And that gives you the differential. And the higher that number is, the higher it hooks. The more it hooks, the higher the flare. And that's what you see. You see different rings of oil on the ball that stretch across. That's called the flare. That's the axis that's actually migrating inside, trying to correct its own course. So what's happening inside, you could see on the outside of the bowling ball, which is cool as hell. I mean, a big nerd when you see lots of flare. But then the cover stock technology is even more complicated, because we're dealing with stuff like nanotechnology. We've used nanoparticles in our balls that actually increase the hook of and longevity of the cover stock. So we're looking at like performance, oil absorption, like you said. These things are reactive. The plastic shells on a bowling ball at the house center just slimes up. They have no reactivity. They're not very porous, so there's not very much oil displacement happening. The oil is able to seep into the pores of the bowling ball and actually create more friction between the ball and the lane, which helps when you need it to hook. Think of like snow tires versus racing slicks. Mm-hmm. A little bit softer, a little bit more porous, probably. Racing slicks, pump them full of air. And I mean, you probably know well into that about tires and stuff with the bike stuff. But it's a lot of the same rules apply. And so you got to freshen up your cover stocks. Those cover stocks of the bowling alley never been touched. These require maintenance. So it's just like taking care of your car, really. These are high performance, like high tech balls. And I don't think people even all the way up to the Olympic Committee understand that. That's why they won't, allow, and I'm getting off on a tangent, but that's why it's the understanding the sport and all the different variables that go into it. Not to mention the lane conditions. Lane conditions, they can put out any picture you want to, different amounts of oil and different lengths. They can put it forward, they can put it backward. They can have one type of oil going this way and a different viscous type of oil coming the other way. That completely changes your ball reaction. So like in golf, you could see the obstacles. You could see like the tree and the sand pit. You can't see the obstacles on the lane, because trust me, different amounts of oil and different levels of friction, that the different types of lane materials beyond that all play a role in what that ball does on the lane. So the best bowlers in the world, they can hit, a gnat's ass at 60 feet, but it's the ones that figure it out first, that figure out the puzzle with the right ball and the right layout and the right hand position, the right speed, the right tilt, that win the tournament. They're all great. They're all accurate, but it's the smart ones. It's the ones that know what to move to and what ball to use, that figure it out first. And they're the ones that are the most successful. So it's a thinking man sport. It's way more.
I remember you told me that on Instagram a couple of weeks ago about like it's a thinking man sport.
Way more mental than I think a lot of people all the way up to the top, like even the Olympic Committee will admit to.
Yeah. I mean, it's even mental when you're actually performing. But I think what's interesting is the tire analogy you gave is brilliant, because that can give a basic understanding for people looking from the outside in that maybe aren't as interested as you and I are, but they can be like, oh, okay, that makes sense, because it needs traction. And then you get into keep going down. There's more and more micros about traction, and therefore we can start to understand. But I think, like you said about golf, and I think really any other sport, is the condition in which you're competing or just practicing it's in bowling, it's invisible. Like there's
Completely.
thousands and thousands of variables, and most of them, if not all, a large degree of them are invisible because you don't know what you're looking at. I mean, you see on the televised events, they have like the die,
The
which
blue
is always,
stuff, yeah.
yeah, which is always really cool, especially for people that don't like. When I was first getting back into bowling, I was like, oh, now I understand like transition, and then people using urethane and like why that could mess with
Yeah,
that, and like all those
yeah.
things. But I think that's something that's overlooked with bowling is that most of what you're competing on is invisible. And it's up to you to kind of see what you're, witnessing on the lane and then make a ball choice or a ball choice change, see what that does, as well as having to understand what everyone else is doing and that term transition,
Hmm.
which took me a while to even understand what that meant. And then now I'm like, oh, okay. And I think that what people, from my understanding, what people most miss about bowling beyond the invisible condition is they take a house ball, for example, and they're trying to like get it to spin. And it's like, well, when you start moving into some of Storm's line of like the higher end balls or any bowling brand for that matter, a lot of them do the work that you don't need to do to that simple degree of getting the ball to hook. So there's two things I see that are
Hmm.
big misconceptions. One, it's not really about like trying to spin a house ball. You're not going to get it to hook because it's not going to really go anywhere for the most part. But then some balls you don't need to do much, and for the average person, they'll move. But then the other thing is most people, which is what I used to think is right to left or left to right, is hook. It's the ball curving. And now that I've understood like the stronger earlier reading balls, you're maybe not going to see so much left to right or right to left motion, but from what is it, from front to back, the ball will have maybe a less sharp angle because it's hooking so early. It's nice and steady. So with
Hmm.
that, can you speak to that and like what most people think is like the big hook, like that ball hooks because it's moving so much versus oh that ball looks straighter because it's so much earlier reading? Like, can you break that down a little bit?
Right. You're speaking to about a league level audience now. So the lanes that you typically want to play, the way you should play them, technically should be front to back and not left to right. You want to know when that ball is going to use its energy up to. Well, I shouldn't say use it. No bowling ball can save energy. You hear that term all the time. I hate it. Ball can't save energy. It may lose energy at a slower rate,
Mm-hmm.
based on its RG and its surface, but it can't save energy. It's not saving anything. So some lose their energy at really high rates. That's your more aggressive balls. That's your ones with like that are really dull. They're sanded down to like 1,000 grit. Their RGs are super low. Their differentials are high. Everything about that ball is screaming hook and hook early, right? Because sometimes there's a lot of oil out there and you kind of need that type of reaction. So, and then there's other balls that are the exact opposite. They're pearl polished. They have super high RGs. They go really, really long. Anyway, so yeah, I forgot the question. I got off on a tangent.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, we're getting into it, and I would just, I think you answered it, but it's just like what most people think. They're trying to see a sideways um, ball movement rather than looking from. And this is because it's probably not relevant to most people that bowl. They just a party or going out with their friends or like on a date or something. But for people that maybe just want to be, a little bit more impressive to their friends, it's like, all right, well,
I
you
mean,
want
yeah, that's cool.
to,
Throw the big hook. Do
yeah.
that. Yeah, I love it.
Well, sweet. Yeah, so I think it might be appropriate for us to do another episode later on about like the nitty gritty of bowling because I do have a lot of
Yeah,
friends
it,
and
it
especially
goes
now,
deep.
yeah, especially getting into the bowling community, a little over a year and a half now, just meeting different people, some storm staffers and things like that. I think it'd be interesting to get you to speak to a lot of these things because I hear so much about this or that being the way to do something or what to look for that are completely opposite, but could be right because of context, which
Mhm.
we're here on the Gray Matters podcast. It's not always black and white. There's this middle area called context and substance. So I would love to get some feedback from my friends that do actively bowl and things like that, so we can do maybe a deeper dive for those that are interested.
Oh yeah, we
Uh,
need to. We should. It's relevant. I think it's important. Absolutely.
And also speaking about the Olympics, I think um, I can kind of speak to that as well from my perspective in BMX because they obviously had to push it. I think we're less than 30 days out, but BMX
Hmm.
freestyle, which is not racing, but the what I compete in like X Games, like backflips and tricks. This will be the first year that freestyle BMX has been in the Olympics, so I'm really excited about that. And I think one of the things that stops, I think one of the biggest challenges with anything in life is not communication, but comprehension of something. Because you have these outsiders looking in, thinking they know, but like you spoke about before, like there's so much athleticism and science and technical ability in bowling. Same thing with BMX, but because people look at it from their own perspective and just outside, just hearsay, um, I think that that's what limits the potential. But I love seeing, like, I got back into bowling, end of 2019, and now I think that was the year where there was a big change with who owned the PBA. Like Bolero took it over, something Fox Sports picked it up. Like
That's
there
right.
was
Yeah.
a lot
Hmm.
of televised events, and then the pandemic happened. But bowling was one of the only live sporting events that kept going for some time, and there was a lot of momentum that picked up from it. And I think it's a matter of time between the visibility and the momentum to pick up to where it can become an Olympic sport. There's a lot of Olympic sports that I wouldn't agree with being a sport, but because I don't know much about it. But I think it's just a matter of time. And also, something you spoke about with your exercise physiology background, I don't know if you know, but my girlfriend, she is now leaving athletic training full time to pursue photography full time. But her and I met years ago when she was my athletic trainer, walking me through my ACL rehab, and
Mm,
so it kind of
nice.
sparked there. And then a year and a half later,
Yep.
we started dating. But when I was training and competing still, my sports performance coach, him and I worked together for a while, and then I stopped competing. He took a job down here for the Tampa minor league baseball team, whatever they're called. And when I got more and more involved with bowling and wanting to perform better, my athletic mindset came as like, how can I work in the gym? I'm already in the gym. Like, how can I kind of optimize what I'm doing? So he
Hmm.
took his background and he analyzed videos from me. He looked at the sport, and because he's in baseball now, a lot of the terminology we've been talking about with the ball motion and rotation and all the physics to it, he was like, man, there's so much similarity with throwing a baseball and bowling. And so he took some time and he wrote me up a 3-month training block to focus on, we're planting on one foot. We're doing countless repetitions of a 15, 16-pound ball with one side of our body. And
Asymmetric. Yeah.
yeah, so it
Yeah.
was really, really fun to work with him again, but on a
Interesting.
different front. So I thought you'd find that interesting.
That's cool. I like that. That's cool.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, let's dive a little bit more into something I love talking about on this podcast, something I found myself speaking more to, especially when I left BMX as a profession, is this identity. We create our identities at some point, but a lot of it's formed through, the family we're brought into, or we're born through, and then, different beliefs and things like that instilled in us, and then throughout our time growing up. A lot of it's on the I think most of it's on the unconscious level until we have a prefrontal cortex that's developed to where we
Hmm.
can make logic and reasoning out of things. And something I like asking people that have a similar and a surface level similarity with transitioning from one place in the world to another, or career or mindset, is how did identity play a role in this? Going back to the 300 game that you subbed for, and this guy's like, hey, come run my shop, I just saw you throw a 300. What does that like what does that bring up for you in terms of like identity, in the light of like, can I do this, should I do that, maybe I'm not good enough, but then finding yourself at Storm, what I'd say, I may be biased, but one of the, like, if not the most elite company in bowling, like, how does identity play a factor in these different pivotal moments from being 25 years old, running a pro shop, and then now working at Storm, and like this reality you've created?
Oof, that's an existential question, man. Let's see. I probably I the identity that I've always kind of just assumed was be a jack of all trades, but like a master of none. That's why I never really took bowling seriously, and I always did it. I always did other sports like baseball and soccer and everything. So I feel like I didn't have an identity until later in life, until probably when I moved out here. Honestly, I haven't really thought about it too much, but back then I was trying so hard to. I never worked for anybody up until I worked for Storm. I was always kind of my own boss. So I did the photography thing. That was my identity at a point. And then I did the videography thing. That was my identity at a point. And I did training for the Atlanta Braves. I thought I wanted to do that. I thought that was my identity. So I feel like I don't know if I was searching for something. And now that I look back on it, I probably was, and I didn't know what I was looking for. I didn't know what I wanted. So identity for me back then was a little harder. And then through high school and stuff, and I was always trying to impress, and that didn't get me anywhere. I think I was confused back then. But until I got out here, and then I started getting into a lot of the nitty gritty with the systems here and learning it, I really took an interest in that. And I never thought it was, again, something that I wanted to do, but I didn't know I wanted to do it. And that actually became the best identity that I ever had. And I think that holds true because the majesty hasn't worn off. It still feels like every day is the first day coming into this new job because it's always different. I enjoy it. They let me do what I want to do as far as work wise and improving on what we do here. It's a lot of fun. And I think that became my identity, but it took 31 years to figure out. So it's, yeah, I hope that I hope that qualifies the statement.
Yeah, no, for sure. I appreciate you sharing that. And that's something I'm really fascinated in because I never had my identity challenged until I was 27, 28, like 2017, like when I decided to, which feels weird to say, retire from competition. And then I
Yeah.
was like, getting invited and paid to speak around the world at different events and, start coaching and doing things like this. And I was like, who am I to do all this? Like, I'm not worthy
Mhm.
type of things. And then I found myself still riding at that same level. And then my friends be like, why aren't you competing? Like you're able to. And then there's just like this juggle of identity that kept preventing me from the path I'm on today in terms of confidence. And so I went through like an identity crisis before I was 30 years old. And I really got fascinated with that. And I've learned that, it starts with the things that we do that affirm our identity. And if we want to change those things, then we have to start with changing the way we think and the way we believe our life to be and externally and all that stuff. And it sounds like you always kind of took on the identity of the role you were playing at the time, whether that was, playing sports or working and things like that. And then you found yourself with that kind of open mindedness of just kind of doing this and whatever felt right. You found yourself at, sounds like a pretty freeing and liberating position to pay the bills that you actually enjoy, to where I think you said something like every day it's like a new day because there's so much freedom, there's so much excitement. The environment, from what I've heard you describe, is just supportive, and it sounds like the identity kind of came to the awareness later down the road, to where maybe you found yourself now. You're like, hey, this is nice. Like I enjoy this,
Mhm.
and I'm always just fascinated with identity because I think it's one of the pieces that holds people back from getting to the place they want to be in life because they take
Yeah.
on identity from other people, whether it be their parents, their teachers, their friends, or their own limiting beliefs from an experience that they didn't maybe succeed at. And they took on that identity of like, I'm not good enough to do that, or like, I'm a failure, or I'm X, Y, and Z. And then over time, we just find ourselves kind of affirming that through our external
Yeah.
reality. So, with that too, what was that?
No, I agree. You hit the nail on the head. When people are employed in ways that don't fully tap everything they are, that's the greatest tragedy. And I think if everyone had the ability to uh, express themselves the way they want to, our society would just be transformed overnight. And be their own identities the way they want to be instead of what the job position tells them to be or what society tells them to be, whatever they have.
Yeah,
Couldn't agree
100%.
more.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I reflect back to 17 and my parents somehow trusting me and trusting the path I was on enough to allow me to drop out of high school to compete professionally, move from Massachusetts to North Carolina to train with the best of the best, and what that did for me and how that built the identity by doing something over and over again. And that's, I mean, that's where habit forming is. It's conscious repetition then instills the program that I do this. I am a
Mm-hmm.
writer. I am a bowler. I am a golfer. I am a lawyer, whatever it may be. But I find too, one, I'm beyond fortunate and grateful that my parents support me like that. And what I've also noticed is not everyone has that support background. They, oftentimes feel like their parents want them to go on this path that they don't really feel like that, or society tells them to be successful you have to do X, Y, and Z, and then we end up having a society that's, you know, not fulfilled, stressed out, sick, and tired. And bringing it back to your journey, you know, you're always doing things of interest to you, and then you found yourself now in this role that you completely love, it sounds like. And so what I'm curious of too is, for me, that identity that I was chasing with BMX was fueled by a vision. It was, I saw Dave Mira and the other guys doing something I loved and wanted to do, so that's what fueled me. Did you have something similar for you in your early years leading you to what you do today? Or was it just like that, be a jack of all trades but master of none, and just kind of exploring the world, if you will, that led you to something that you were just like, yes, this is what I want to be doing and how I want to live my life?
It's kind of the latter. Yeah. It's just whatever presented itself at that time. But I get asked a little bit sometimes, like, what do I do to be a tech director? How do I design balls? And I could tell you kind of like my academics and things that I took interest in as a child, but what I do on the day to day is not the fulfillment of what's like some pre-existing job description. It's things that I took interest in on my own that other people want to like appreciate or like or want access to. So yeah, I can tell you about the academics, but the rest is what you have to create on your own. That how do I say it? All right, you don't take Norm Duke, the professional bowler, right, and then say he was just like this other bowler. You don't even say he was like this bowler plus this other bowler divided. No, he was just Norm Duke. He carved He carved a niche that represented his unique expression of talents in this world. And if everyone, like I said, can express their talents of this world in their jobs, society would be transformed overnight. That's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm like, again, I may be biased because I made a career out of something I loved at an early age,
Yeah.
but I also did a ton of things before I was 17 and turned pro. Like
Yeah. Things that interest you.
yeah,
Sure.
just everything. And whether it was welding and landscaping, or it was baseball and basketball, it was just anything I could do. I wanted to try it out. And then BMX came in through skateboarding and rollerblading when I was like 12, and then it just took over. And then it led me to the life I live today, which is something I never fathomed doing. But what, you know, I was asking about with vision is, I always had this vision in my mind of what I wanted to do, and then that became my, by doing that, that became the identity I held, where it was like a double-edged sword. It held me back from progressing to what I do today, which, fast forwarding to, or backtracking to 2020, January 2020 was the last time I rode. That was a conscious decision for me to say, hey, I've never been off my bike more than 4 months since I was 13 years old, and that was due to a surgery. Let's see
Mhm.
what a year is like. 2 months later, the pandemic hit, and then here we are. It's been maybe 16 months since I've ridden, but it's been one of the best things for me because it helped me get clear on the vision I'm working towards and the identity that I want to create. And something that I work with my clients on, and something I practice myself, is finding someone that you can model in life. I refer to people as virtual mentors. Dave Mira was a virtual mentor of mine when I was a child. I had a poster of him on my wall. Became friends with him through my pursuit of my dream and my passion. Became friends with him, training partners and competitors. And then, you know, getting into the world of business and speaking. Kerwin Ray from Australia has been a virtual mentor of mine that I've been able to meet and hang out with a couple times. And then I have virtual mentors, like, let's say Jim Carrey. Like, I just love his story, what he represents.
Mm.
But what I'm getting at is, it started out as an unconscious behavior of like, hey, they're doing something similar to what I want to do, and just modeling. Okay, I got to go film videos. I got to go to contests. I got to go to demos. I got to go to these new locations. I got to reach out to brands. Otherwise, they're not going to know who I am. If I want to make a career out of this, I got to make money. So it's like all these pieces. And something that I think is very profound, especially as you get older, is creating a vision for your ideal life. You're living your ideal life today. And, you know, that, going off my notes from your Instagram, what I've seen over the last few months is, you know, you're always out in the wild. You're always hanging out with your family, doing adventurous things. And of course, you're always bowling, at least from what I see on the gram. So it's like you, in a sense, found yourself in an ideal version of your life that came from doing things. and experimenting. And it's like, what does Gary Vaynerchuk always say? Like, you're not going to know what your
Mm.
favorite food is
Yeah.
until you've tried it. So
Yeah,
you got to
exactly.
go taste things.
Exactly. Try every food. I still do. That's if that's the simplest thing you do. I mean, that simple act, I think, translates to the rest of life. Try everything. That's huge. Absolutely.
Yeah. And also on that note, with asking advice, people asking you advice, I get that question a lot. How do I find my passion? How do I find my purpose? And I'm like, well, I mean, I could give you my blueprint, but that involves brain surgery. That involves,
Yeah.
it's other surgeries. It involves being broke. It involves a whole lot of things you probably don't want to experience. But what I can give you is put all your everything into what fuels you, what lights you up, what brings you the most joy and fulfillment, and just try things. I was fortunate enough to have tried so many things that I stumbled upon something I loved and made a career out of it that literally and figuratively saved my life and then led me on the path I am today. So what I say to people is, okay, your purpose can start with you being the best version of yourself, because that is going to directly and indirectly affect other people based upon how you show up in the world and interact with people. Adding to that, just try things. Try things that are interesting to you. Where, obviously as you get older, limiting beliefs kind of cloud that, and like, oh, I don't know, this or that, like
Mhm.
whatever comes up. But just do your best to try things and experiment, because along that pursuit is going to open up maybe your true purpose beyond yourself. That's how it
Mhm.
worked out for me. Was, I went through some stuff, I learned, I experimented, I optimized my health, my performance, and then I found myself super passionate about sharing that message and helping other people. But not everyone needs to go through the journey I went through. Not everyone needs to go through your journey. Not everyone needs the same education. It's all about experimenting and just seeing what comes from it. As long as you're, trying to create coherence with what you're doing and what fuels you.
You're probably good at something. You're probably really good at something, and you don't even know you're good at it yet. So try it all, and something might stick.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I love that topic of identity and vision, because I think it's something that lacks from today's conversation society, because we're just driven by what other people think of us or tell us to do.
Hmm.
And I, me being a high school dropout and then now having my own business, it came from experimenting, and it came from obviously people in my life supporting me. And so I'm just always fascinated by other people's journey, because like you said, that you just found yourself in something you never really thought about doing. And had it not been that sub that you had, that game that you had when you were subbing that bowling league when you moved to Florida, like who knew what you'd be doing
Crazy.
today?
Yeah, it's you never know what is around the corner. Never know what's around the corner.
All right. Well, let's take a quick hard pivot and let's talk about tattoos, because I know you and I have talked about tattoos a little
Sure.
bit on the
Yeah,
gram. And
tattoos.
yeah, what sparked your first tattoo? Like, how'd that come about?
Oh, my first tattoo was oh gosh, it was, I think I drank too much, and it was with an ex-girlfriend. She was in town visiting from another college. Did it on Halloween. Always wanted one. It's like a male tramp stamp across my shoulders. It's a little tribal thing. I'm totally gonna get it covered up. I've decided. The wife's like, no, it helps you remember of like happy times. And I'm like, well, I get made fun of all the time for it. So that's my first tattoo. Then I got another one on my uh, lower right leg, the one that doesn't have the sleeve on it. And I got that with mom and my wife. We all picked each other's tattoos, so we all got tattoos in the same spot. And
Oh, that's awesome.
it hurt. It hurt. Foot was terrible. But the big one I started 3 years ago for my dad, who passed away. And so all the images on it, all the imagery is stuff that we've taken over the years. So he was a news reporter, photographer, editor, did all the newsroom life. And so he got a lot of cool photos, and all these are something that we've taken or either I've taken. And it's just a giant mishmash of just random thoughts and memories that I had with him.
That's awesome. I love that. I didn't know that about your leg sleeve. That's because I've seen the photos of it and it's pretty intense. I don't have anything below the top half of my back. I don't have anything below
Yeah.
that, so I don't know what
Yeah.
that's like. But um, yeah, I'm always fascinated with people that have tattoos, because I come across either end of the spectrum. People like you and I who seem to put thought into what we get, and there's meaning behind it for the most part. I know the drinking influence first tattoo may have not been so
Not
conscious in
that one.
terms,
Yeah.
yeah. But then on the other end, it's just like, oh, I just thought it was cool, so I put it on me, and I was like, oh,
Hmm.
I'm so analytical that like I couldn't fathom putting something on my body forever if I didn't have any sort of meaning. But
Yeah.
everyone
Now I'm
does.
like, I want to hear people's tattoo stories. I want to hear
Exactly.
about them. Like when I ask you what your tattoo is, oh, it's a Chinese symbol for, no, I want to know what the tattoo is. And that tells a lot about the person, kind of their soul and stuff, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've never looked at it that way, but that's definitely true. Like I said, I'm always interested in people's stories in general, but when it comes to a tattoo, I'm like, there's got to be something behind that, and I'm often surprised where they're just like, no, I just thought it was cool, so I put that like shark on my body. I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Like, all right, cool. I mean, you do your thing, but that's not how I permanently put things on my body.
Yeah. Not anymore. Not anymore.
So with the leg, is that still a work in progress? Do you have ideas to add to it, or what's going on with that?
Yeah. I like to go, it goes 3/4 of the way up, about mid thigh. I'd like to go a little bit higher. Just, I've got some more imagery I'd like to put in. I dabble in the Photoshop. So I got like a space scene with like galaxy with all of my family's astrological symbols, like my wife's, my daughter's, my mom's, my dad's, and then they're scattered across the sky. So I'm working on that piece, and it'll probably take another year or two to finish because my guy's in Hawaii now. He moved to Hawaii from Vegas, so
Oh, okay.
Vegas is not that far away from Salt Lake, so I can pop down in a day and
Yep.
actually fly back that night. But Hawaii is a little bit more of an investment.
Oh yeah.
So when the time is right, I'll get more done.
Yeah, I keep getting encouraged by different people in my life to open my mind to other tattoo artists, but
Hmm.
my guy is in North Carolina, and he's a part of the BMX community. He's been doing BMX rider tattoos he's been doing tattoos for like 20 years. He actually went to art school and then realized, being a broke artist wasn't that fun, and he could make good money doing tattoos and still be passionate about what he
Oh,
does.
totally.
So
Good for
he,
him.
yeah,
100%.
so it's been amazing. But because he's tattooed so many of my friends from around the world, because the town we lived in, BMX riders would come in from everywhere to train. I just got to see his work over the years. And, when someone, you trust them, I think you can speak to this. It's like, all
It's
right,
hard to let him go.
I don't want
I don't
anyone else
want to go to
tattooing me
anyone
now.
else.
I
Yeah.
don't want a
You
different
trust.
style. And yeah, you trust them. I think
Yeah.
that's the most important piece.
Yeah. We've gone through some blood and tears together, and a couple back-to-back days, like 10-hour days. Whew, you're on another plane of existence. Like I wouldn't pass out, but there was so many like endorphins and stuff going through. I was biggest trip you'll ever go on is back-to-back 8-hour, 10-hour days. Man,
Yeah, that's
those are
wild.
rough. Whew.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. So I want to respect your time. We've been chatting for about an hour now, and I have a couple questions I want to wrap up with because I do want us
Sure.
to talk again in the future more in a specific bowling intention. I think
No,
that
we
could be
have to
fun.
now. Totally.
Yeah,
We
yeah, we
have to.
definitely do. I'm curious, what's been a moment in your time where you felt stuck? What in whatever regard comes to mind, and what is something that helped you generate momentum out of that feeling of being stuck?
Hmm. Good question. I think, uh, okay. I think the time when I moved out to Storm in March of 15, and then dad telling me a month later that he didn't have much longer. He passed a few months later. I kind of got into like my darkest place for a few years. And I tried to replace that kind of void that he left with work, and that only stressed me out further because then I became paranoid, like, oh, what did that person say, or what did they hate my last video or whatever. And then when you start to get into the ball development, there's a lot riding on that, and like that's what we do. Yeah, we do like shirts and crap like that, but we make the business is the ball, so there's a lot riding on that, and that I don't really shoulder lightly, and that just stressed me out even more. Like, I remember being in a league and being so just ticked off. I was getting like chest pains. My buddy that I work with is like, bro, you got to calm down. I was stressing out about something dumb at work I shouldn't have been, losing sleep, not exercising, not eating right. But I think what got me out of that rut was honestly getting away from bowling altogether. I kind of just got out of the scene, stopped bowling tournaments, started skiing more, really got into that. That's a lot of fun, learning the technical aspect of that and trying to master that. But just removing that constant out of the equation, getting outside more, just getting up and in the mountains, learning how to water ski, stuff like that really helped. So you had to break the mold. And so, yeah, my friends here are like, why don't you come bowl this tournament? Man, I'd rather kind of just hang out with my family this weekend. And that created a much healthier me, I think. So, yeah, I still bowl here, but competition wise, I might go do the occasional tournament, but it's good to get outside and stretch is what I'm trying to say. And just get out of, you don't want to smell bowling balls for too long. So I think it messes with your mind. I really do.
Well, I definitely agree. That's something I spoke to earlier with me leaving BMX and just exploring life completely. Without it. Yeah. Without what is life like without my bike? Because over half of my life has been on my bike. Exactly. And just what's life like? And it's been beautiful. Haven't felt better since I was like 16 physically. Oh yeah. And mentally. Yep. So, but something you just spoke to, I actually forgot about this earlier. This will be something we can talk more about in the next episode. But Storm, from my understanding, is the only company that actually scents their bowling balls. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, that is correct. Every freaking one of them that I'm sitting right next to, I can smell them all at the same time. There, if you can see it all. There's every ball. Oh, yeah. So we line up the balls. Every single ball has a different fragrance. It's nuts. Yep. And that isn't even a fraction of the fragrances that I have like as samples on my desk. We have root beer. We have every fruit combination, cherry, orange. There's some of the popular ones. Grape is a big one. Then we do some weird stuff like cinnamon streusel and funnel cake. And
so what's the phase 2? Is that blueberry cobbler or is that the astrophysics?
Astrophysics is I'm not sure, but red velvet cake is the phase 2.
Okay, because it must be the astrophysics has like a blueberry something in there, because
it could, yeah.
The first week I had it, I left it in the box in my car in like the spring in North Carolina, so it's still pretty warm, and I hadn't had it drilled yet, and I was like, my girlfriend was like, what air freshener do you have in here? And I was like, I don't have anything. And then one day when I got it drilled, I opened it up and it was just hit me in the face, and I was like, oh yeah. Oh, I didn't know that they did this. And then I think my next one was like an Omega Crux, and it has like that cinnamon. And like, I just cinnamon. Now, when I leave my bags in the car overnight, it's just like walk into a nice, not natural, but bowling ball assisted air freshener for your car. And it's pretty pleasant. It's just funny.
Freshens your bag and your car, and your hand doesn't like smell like a dirty old bowling ball at the end of the night. It's great. There's a lot of efficacy to it. And then a little bit of the science. So the olfactory is pretty much really close, if I remember correctly, to the hypothalamus, which is the memory center. That's why you remember smells and they take you back to your childhood and all that stuff. Well, remember the last time that you bowled like a 300 game or like your best game with a bowling ball. And chances are you're probably holding it like this, like up close to your face. And you're going to remember that time. It's going to take you right back to that time that you had a good experience with that ball. And then you create a lot of brand loyalty that way with being a part of these people's memories, because that's so closely related, your smell to your memory. Trying to create good experiences with the balls.
Yeah, and actually that's something I want us to dive in more to on the next episode, because what comes to mind for me for that triggering of smell to memory is you'll probably unconsciously set up the same way you did and like be more focused and in that groove with everything from your release to your tempo to all that stuff. And that's, I'm really excited to talk about that, because I never thought of it.
There's some science behind that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. There's some cool papers that I did some research on in college with smell relating to human performance. And that's probably one of the earliest reasons I like Storm so much, because like, hey, there's like some science behind that.
Yeah.
That's legit. Whether they know it or not, I don't know, but there's actually some legit science behind it. So yeah.
I got to share that with the BMX community. Start getting them to center grips on their handlebars or something, so that way
Uh-huh.
they got special
That's what
competition
the
grips.
studies were. I'll
Yeah.
have to find those and send them to you. They're cool. They were interesting. But yeah, that's exactly right. You'd be
That,
surprised. You'd be
that
surprised what it could do.
That's amazing. And that's actually funny, the whole smell thing, because the new skin smell that like burns your nostrils. The first
Yeah, that
time
sucks.
someone opened a bottle of that when I started bowling again, I was like, oh, I'm 14 again, and I'm just dreading putting that shit on my thumb where it's all blistered and it stings and then it hurts. And
See, it took you right back to
yep.
it. And that's not a pleasant smell. At least you would classify it. No,
Yeah,
you
not
don't
at
want to
all.
remember that.
Not at all. Not at all. Well, cool, Chad. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I appreciate you just responding initially on Instagram and just us kind of having an ongoing dialogue over the last year, and then you sharing your time today on the podcast and being open to doing a future episode, getting more into the weeds of bowling science, and maybe
Ooh,
just
please, that's when it gets fun. Yes.
yeah. So I'm gonna have to do
Yes.
some research on that, talk to some guys and some gals that I know that are in the bowling scene, and get some my friends that are from the outside, just see what they'd be interested in. And I think that could be a
Do that
fun.
bike wheel experiment with them. That's a
Yeah.
fun one.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
I mean that video with how simple that demonstration was, how much clarity that gave to me and understanding when looking at the numbers on a ball and then matching that with we'd even talk about like the technology of like Specto, like that. I didn't know what that was until I stepped into a center in North Carolina that had it after so long of not bowling. And I was like, oh, this is cool. Like this is helpful. There's so much to it. So I'm really excited, and I just appreciate you, and I appreciate you sharing the time and sharing about your life. And I'm really excited to chat again.
I'm privileged, and it's been an honor. I can't wait to do it again. Yeah, let's get in deep to this stuff and make some fans out of bowling.
Awesome.
Let's
Well,
do it.
I appreciate it, man. You have a good day, and we'll talk soon.
Cool, man. Thank you.